As we have discussed in the last lectures that even in the human embryos, three types of kidneys develop: the pronephric kidney, the mesonephric kidney, and finally the definitive kidney developed from the metanephric kidney. But the question is, why do the pronephric and mesonephric kidneys develop? The reason for their development could be, one reason is that they may be evolutionary vestige, that they are still repeated in the human embryos as an evolutionary vestige. They don't have any significant role. The other reason is that they induce the upcoming structures. What I mean by this is that for the development of definitive metanephric kidney, the preceding structures are required to be developed because they will ultimately stimulate, they will ultimately induce the formation of definitive metanephric kidney. So this is like a domino effect. It is like the domino that first there is formation of pronephric kidney. This pronephric kidney or pronephros, it will secrete certain chemicals, certain inducing factors that will then lead to formation of pronephric kidney, pronephric duct, pronephric duct, and this pronephric duct will then lead to induction of mesonephros, and then mesonephros is ultimately it will then induce the formation of metanephros. So if pronephros does not develop, pronephric duct will not develop, and if pronephric duct will not develop, mesonephros won't develop, and if mesonephros won't develop, of course, metanephros will also not develop. And in this diagram, also remember that this pronephric duct will form the mesonephric duct, which in turn will form the uterine bud, and that uterine bud is required for the formation of kidney in humans. It will form the ureter, and in the human kidneys it will also form the renal, pelvises, major, minor, calyces as well, all these structures that we will discuss in today's lecture. But the thing is that it is like a domino effect. So without the formation of pronephros, ultimately metanephros will fail to form. That is simple. So that is why it is important to form the pronephric as well as mesonephric kidney. And of course there is another reason that in human males, the mesonephros, some of the derivatives of some of the structures related with mesonephros, they are involved in formation of some components of male reproductive system that we will discuss in the upcoming lectures. So here is the distalmost part of ureteric bud, which actually arises from the mesonephric duct. Now it is going into the metanephric area, metanephros. Now basically metanephric area consists of that metanephric mesenchyme. What is mesenchyme? Let's make a concept clear. Basically mesenchyme, it consists of loosely arranged irregularly shaped cells, like this, loosely arranged irregularly shaped cells. Now these cells, they are floating in the ground substance like this, and these cells, they are not in a direct contact with each other. For example, one cell is here, other is here, and so on. So basically what we can say that it is the embryonic connective tissue, and this embryonic connective tissue is called mesenchyme. Now the what is this, metanephros? So let's draw the metanephros here. So let's suppose somewhat here is the metanephros, and this duct is going into the metanephros, and this metanephros, again, it consists of irregularly shaped cell interspersed within the ground substance. So this is basically in the form of mesenchyme. Now what will happen that this mesenchyme, this irregularly shaped and loosely arranged mesenchyme of the metanephros, it will come close together, and what they say is that this mesenchyme condenses. So as this mesenchyme condense, it forms a cap-like structure. It forms a cap-like structure on this metanephric not metanephric, sorry, ureteric part. Now it will also still be containing that irregularly shaped cell within the interspersed within the ground substance, but the difference is that these cells, they will become close together. Now this what is this? Now it is called metanephric blastema. Initially it was metanephric mesenchyme or simply metanephros. Now it is metanephric. Now it is called metanephric blastema. Blast mean that it will rapidly divide and it will form something, so it is metanephric blastema, and it will form the metanephric sort of metanephric cap. Now this ureteric duct, it is growing into this metanephric blastema, but let's just forget about the metanephric blastema and let's just focus on this. And please remember that because it is growing into this metanephric blastema, let's draw it again. This metanephric blastema will cause the differentiation and division and differentiation of this ureteric part, and this ureteric part, it itself will cause the proliferation and differentiation so on of this metanephric blastema, and this is the process of reciprocal induction that we have discussed in the previous lecture as well. Now this ureteric bud, as it comes close to the metanephric blastema, in its honor it will first dilate and it will then divide a certain number of times. Let's see how it actually divides. So let's watch the animation. So it will divide one time, so this is first division, then another time, second time, so second division, then third time, third division, and then fourth time. So 4 time divisions will be there. Let's draw it again. So here is actually, let's see, so first division, then there is that second division, here also second, then third, third, and here let's draw 4. I'm not gonna draw each and every one. So that's how it actually forms. So 4 times it will divide 4 times. Now what will happen that this divided and subdivided part, its proximal part, it will expand and dilate, and what will happen to the other parts, that they will sort of slide within each other, and this is called intersception. Let's see the animation. So you can see they are going inside each other. So you see they are going sort of inside each other, they are sliding into each other like this. So one structure is going into, it is sliding into the other structure, and so on, and that structure will ultimately slide into the previous structure, and in this way this is the process of intersception. Well, I don't know why it is looking like a circumcised penis to me. But yeah, this is the structure that they form. Now as they sort of undergo the process of intersception, they will ultimately fuse. But I want to make the concept of intersception a bit more clear to you, so let's watch another animation. So let's suppose here is a simple tube. Now what will happen, that this tube will slide into itself like this. Here you can see it is sliding into itself, and this is the process of intersception. Now if I cut a section of this tube, and let's watch the animation again. So here you can see that it is sliding into, this is sort of like a telescope, and this process is called intersception. Now with the process of intersception, these early 4 divisions, they will sort of slide into one another, and ultimately they will fuse. So let's watch the animation. So here again you can see that they are sliding into each other, and ultimately these 1, 2 and 3, they will fuse together like this. Now what they have done is that they have formed the major calyces. What are major calyces? These are sort of pouches. There are major calyces and there are minor calyces. So these are sort of few pouches, and basically they are 2 to 3 major calyces. So these are the pouches that ultimately collect and drain the urine into this pelvis. So this pelvis is a wash basin like structure. So here is that renal pelvis. So this is the renal pelvis, and here is one major calyx, here is the other major calyx, and here is the three. So these three major calyces, they are ultimately draining and opening into the renal pelvis. Now, through the similar process, there is first the formation of four divisions, and then these four divisions, they will fuse together through the process of intussusception to form the minor calyces. A very similar process occurs. I haven't made that animation because I think you would understand it just by looking at the previous animation, because this is the exact similar structure as we have discussed previously. So there is the formation of major callus, and then there is the formation of minor calyces. So these are the minor calyces. 8 to 10 minor calyces arise. Now each of the minor callus, it is covered by the subdivision of the metanephric blastema. Let me explain this concept. Some of you might be confused by now. So let's make some diagrams here to explain this. So actually here is that ureteric part, and as there is one division of ureteric part, it is covered by the metanephric blastemal cap. So as it gets divided, and there are two branches of it, this metanephric blastema, it will also be divided into two, and each of the division will be covering it like this. So this one metanephric blastemal cap, it will be divided into two, and as it is further subdivided, this metanephric blastemal cap, it will also get subdivided, and each of the terminal end of that subdivision, it will still be wearing that metanephric blastemal cap. So initially there was that huge metanephric blastemal cap like this, but as division and subdivision continued, ultimately here you can see that now each of the terminal end of subdivision, each of that is still covered by that metanephric blastemal cap like this. So I hope you got this concept. So what will happen that as this further it will continue to divide and subdivide, again each of the subdivision at its terminal end will be wearing that metanephric blastemal cap. So what is its name? Please remember, it is metanephric blastemal cap. This is the full name, or it is simply called metanephric cap, or simply you can call it blastemal cap, and it is nothing but the condensation of metanephric mesenchyme. It is basically a subdivision of condensation of metanephric mesenchyme. Now each of this terminal end of minor calyx, each of that minor calyx, it will also further subdivide a number of times. Ultimately this tree-like pattern is formed. So here also tree-like pattern, and of course, as I have told you previously, at the terminal end of each of these structures, each of these subdivision, there will be that metanephric blastemal cap. And the metanephric blastema that remains behind here, it will form the fibrous capsule of the kidney. So please remember that fibrous capsule of the kidney, it is also derived from the metanephric blastema, but all these remaining structures, they are derived from the ureteric duct, or or the metanephric duct, which actually arises from the mesonephric duct. Now each of these structures, they are covered by that metanephric blastemal cap, and this metanephric blastemal cap will actually form the nephrons. But in this diagram you might assume that there are very few of these structures are there, but actually there are the millions of these structures, about 1 to 1.5 million per kidney, as far I remember. These are that structures. Basically these are the collecting ducts. So these collecting ducts, they will ultimately open into the minor calyx, and they are forming a pyramid like structure. So you can see they are forming sort of a pyramid. Now each of these collecting ducts, they will collect urine from some of the nephrons, and ultimately they will drain that urine into minor calyx, and these minor calyx will ultimately drain into its major calyx, and major calyx will ultimately drain into the renal pelvis. The term pelvis literally means wash basin. How it is acting like a wash basin, let me explain you with a video. So actually these three tabs are the major calyces. So these three tabs, they are releasing the urine into the renal pelvis, and renal pelvis literally means renal basin. So these are basically the basin-like structures, and here from the renal pelvis this is like a ureter. So urine is ultimately collected through the ureter. So basically the terminal end of the ureter, it is dilated, it is ampullary region, it is dilated region, and that assumes a basin-like shape, and that is called renal pelvis. And three major calyces, 2 to 3 major calyces, they open into this renal pelvis, and within the major pelvis 2 to 3 minor pelvises open. So that is how the arrangement of these collecting system of kidneys is there. Now the question arises that how the nephrons develop. So let's watch that animation to understand that concept. So here is that terminal end of collecting duct, and as we have discussed previously that each end of the collecting duct, it is covered by the metanephric blastemal cap. Let me slightly explain you here that what this structure is here, so that you don't get confused. So here is that minor pelvis, and from the minor pelvis we have seen that there are certain divisions and subdivisions like this tree-like arrangement that we have already discussed, and that ultimately forms the pyramid. And at the terminal end of pyramid, so at that, not pyramid, this is basically the collecting ducts, and at the terminal end of these there are that metanephric blastemal cap like this. Now let's say that we have enlarged a single one of this. So let's suppose we are just enlarging this one, and here we have enlarged this one, and now we are looking at this structure only. So I hope you got the concept. Now let's focus on this diagram. So here is the terminal end of collecting duct. This is the collecting duct which is covered by the metanephric blastemal cap. Now this metanephric blastemal cap, it will grow and it will form the vesicle. It will form a globular structure which is called vesicle. Now this vesicle, it will further grow and it will form a pear-shaped structure, or some author call it that it forms a comma-shaped structure. So actually it will form either a shape like this, or it may form a comma-shaped structure slightly like this. So pear-shaped or comma-shaped structure will be formed. So next what will happen that it will form an S-shaped kidney tubule, and of course the terminal end is still dilated. Then this S-shaped will slightly rotate, and here this dilated end, within this dilated end a tuft of capillaries will develop. So a tuft of capillaries will develop and it will sort of invaginate. Now it has formed that renal corpuscle. Renal corpuscle has two parts. One is that glomerulus, this tuft of capillaries called glomerulus, and the other one is this cup-like structure which is the initial part of nephron. This is this cup-like initial part of nephron. This is called Bowman's capsule. So these two structure as a whole, both of these structure as a whole, they are termed as renal corpuscle. So from here the blood will be filtered and it will come into this Bowman capsule, and here it will form, the urine will be formed. So ultimately urine will be formed, and ultimately it will be secreted here, and ultimately it will come into this collecting duct. So let's further watch the formation of the nephron. So next what will happen that it will further lengthen up. Now at this time right now there are the three parts of this nephron only. One is this renal corpuscle, Other one is the dilated, not dilated. So one is this dilated part, renal corpuscle, or Bowman capsule is this part of nephron, this one. The other is the proximal part of nephron, somewhat here to here is the proximal part of nephron, and then there is the distal part of nephron. Next, what will happen that from this proximal and distal part here, somewhat here, a loop will be formed like this. So then there will be an extra part will be sort of generated. So there will be 4 parts. So let's watch first the animation. So like this. Then what will happen that ultimately this proximal part, it will sort of overgrow the other parts, and distal part, it will also sort of overgrow. So because the space is less, so as it will overgrow, it will sort of form a convoluted appearance like this. Here also and here also it will form a convoluted appearance. So this will form the proximal convoluted tubule, and this will form the distal convoluted tubule. And here it will further grow downward to form the loop of Henle. So let's move forward and see what happens. So here you can see here initially it was like that, but later it formed that convoluted appearance. So this is proximal convoluted tubule, this is distal convoluted tubule, and here are the loops of Henle. So here it is more clear in this diagram, and here this part is fused here. Now let's label this newly formed nephron. So here we have the Bowman's capsule, and this is glomerulus, and whole this structure, both of these as a whole, they are called renal corpuscle. Now this convoluted appearance, because of this convoluted appearance, this is the proximal, because it is proximal to Bowman's capsule. So this is proximal convoluted tubule. And here is the other convoluted tubule, which is the distal convoluted tubule. Distal convoluted tubule. Then there is that loop of Henle, and it has the descending limb. This is the descending limb, and it is the ascending limb of loop of Henle. So these are the main structures, and this one is the collecting duct. So this is the collecting duct, and distal convoluted tubule is connected with the collecting duct through a structure called connecting tubule. It is not collecting tubule, it is connecting tubule. So here this part is called, let's label it, it is called connecting, because it is connecting. So it is connecting tubule. So please keep that in mind. So these are the basic components of a newly formed, not newly formed, even in the adult, these are the components of nephron. So now let's review the formation of nephron. So here again you can see metanephric blastemal cap forming the vesicle, which form a pear-shaped structure or comma-shaped structure, which form the S-shaped primitive tubule, which forms that it is then rotated, and here the tuft of capillaries, it is sort of invaginated into it to form the Bowman's capsule, and it will further lengthen up, and ultimately it will form that adult nephron. So now briefly let's discuss what is inside the renal pyramid. As we have discussed previously, that renal pyramid consists of lots of collecting ducts and collecting tubules. Collecting duct, actually lots of collecting tubules, they sort of fuse together to form the larger collecting duct. So basically within the renal pyramid, the collecting tubule and collecting ducts are there, and from here they ultimately come into the cortex. So basically pyramid is the medulla. Medulla is the deeper part and cortex is the superficial part. So here is that cortex and here is the medulla. So here actually I have shown just 3 nephrons, but actually there will be thousands and thousands of nephrons in each pyramid. So here is one nephron which is opening into this collecting duct. Here also opening into a collecting tubule or collecting duct through this connecting tubule. Now, one thing that you must keep in your mind that the nephron almost completely develops from the metanephric blastemal cap. Only the collecting tubules and collecting ducts and renal pelvis and minor and major calyces and ureters, these are the structures that develop from the ureteric duct. But the nephron, it actually develops from the metanephric blastemal cap. So here is that pyramid, and pyramid consists of collecting tubules and collecting ducts, and along with that it also consists of these parts of nephron. So here you can see the loop of Henle, it is inside the nephron, but some of the nephron, their loop of Henle are short, some of them their loop of Henle are longer. Let's not go into details of that, but I just wanted to give you a sneak peek of the histology of pyramid, but we will discuss the histology in detail in a separate lecture. But here one thing that I want to make you understand that here is the medulla. Pyramid is basically the part of medulla. So this is the medulla, and above that is, here is the cortex. So cortex basically consists of this renal corpuscle, proximal and distal convoluted tubules, and even the collecting tubules and collecting ducts. But these renal corpuscle and proximal and distal convoluted tubule, they are almost never found in the medulla. Keep that in mind. And what is this part? So this is cortex, this is medulla, and what is this part? Actually, between the two pyramids, there is extension of cortex between the two pyramids. So here is that extension of cortex. Of course, there will be another pyramid somewhat here. There will be another pyramid. So here also there will be yet another pyramid like this. So between the two pyramid, there is that extension of cortex. So here you can see there is the extension of cortex between the pyramids, and this extension of cortex between the pyramids, it is actually called the renal column. So here is the renal column. So what they say in textbook is that renal column is the extension of cortex into the medulla. Right, so this is the renal column, and the renal column, its histology is very similar to that of cortex, that it also mainly consists of the renal corpuscle, and proximal and distal convoluted tubule, but collecting tubule and some part of loop of Henle may also be within this renal column. Now here you can see that there are 8 to 10 renal pyramids that are opening into minor calyces, and these minor calyces, they are opening into major calyces. I think I need to label them so that you don't get confused. So this is the renal pyramid, and renal pyramid opening into this minor calyx. All these are minor calyx. And about 2 to 3 minor calyx. So about 2 to 3 minor calyx, they ultimately open into these pouches called major calyces. So here is the one major calyx. This is the other major calyx. This is also major calyx, and it is also major calyx. And all these three major calyx, they open into that basin-like structure called, what is this? Renal pelvis. And of course, don't forget that all these renal pyramids, they are surrounded by the cortex. They are surrounded by cortex and extensions of cortex between the two pyramids. So here these are the renal columns. Now in this diagram, what you can see is that there is that lobulated appearance of the kidney. So the fetal kidney, and even in children below the age of 1 year, there is that lobulated appearance of the kidney because there are presence of these grooves. So these are the grooves there. So because of presence of these grooves, there is that lobulated appearance of the fetal kidney like this. So lobulated appearance of the kidney is there. But as the baby is born, even before birth, they will grow further, and till the age of about 1 year, these lobulations are lost because they further grow and they will become fused together like this, and almost smooth appearance of kidney is there. So ultimately the smooth appearance of kidney is formed. Now understand one thing that let me explain this concept. Now this renal pyramid, it consists of its own units of nephrons inside it, and ultimately they will be opening into the collecting tubule and collecting duct, which will open into minor calyx in its own minor calyx. So this is a single unit of the kidney, not smallest unit. Smallest unit is uniferous tubule. Let's not talk about that. So this is a sort of a single larger unit of the kidney. This pyramid along with its surrounding cortex, this is a single unit. This is called one renal lobe. So actually there are 8 to 10 renal lobe. Why it is divided into lobes? One reason is that within the fetal kidney they are in the form of lobulated appearance due to presence of these grooves. The other reason is that let's suppose that only this lobe is isolated and it is provided with everything that it requires for working. It will still continue to function and it will continue to pour the urine into its major calyx. Let's suppose we just somehow destroy all other structures. So let's destroy all other structure, but let's suppose that this part remains, only this part of the kidney remains. Now even if this part of the kidney remained, it will continue to secrete urine, and this urine will come into this minor calyx and major calyx, and ultimately it will be drained into the ureter. So it is sort of you can say that it is able to, it has that ability of independent existence. So this is one lobe, this is second, and so on. So there are several different renal lobes, and each renal lobe consists of the renal pyramid along with its surrounding renal cortex. So of course, as I have told you previously, that it will grow further. These pyramids and the surrounding cortex, they will grow in size and they will meet together, they will fuse together, and lobulated appearance will be lost, and ultimately a smooth kidney will be formed, and around the kidney there will be the formation of fibrous capsule that is also derived from the metanephric blastema. Now the kidneys, the metanephric kidney, they are developing in the pelvic region. So in the caudal most part of the embryo, somewhat here in the pelvic region, is that metanephric region, and within this metanephric region, from the ventral aspect of metanephric region, you must be knowing that from its ventral aspect the ureteric duct is going into the ventral aspect. So the entry of the ureter and of course the blood vessels also will be entering from the ventral side. So this ventral side of the kidney is basically hilum. Actually it should not be the ventral side of the kidney that should be the hilum. So actually the hilum should be at the medial side. So what will happen, that two things will happen. First, the kidney will ascend upward. From pelvis it will go to the lumbar region. It will be initially it is in the S1 S2 vertebral column region, but ultimately it will come to lie in T12 to L2 region, the lumbar region, right? One thing is this. Other thing will be that it will rotate 90 degree. It will rotate 90 degree clockwise, so that the hilum will come to face the medial side. So let's suppose that here is the ventral side. Initially the hilum is at the, so let's draw the kidney. So here is the kidney, a cut section of the kidney. So here is the hilum. Initially hilum is facing anteriorly. Here also hilum is facing anteriorly like this. Now what will happen, that this kidney will rotate 90 degree. like this. Here also it will rotate 90 degree, and as it will rotate 90 degree, the hilum will be now shifted. This is the hilum. It will rotate like this, so hilum will be shifted medially like this. So two things happen. One is the 90 degree rotation. The other thing is that there is the ascent of kidney. How kidney ascent? Because other structures relative to the kidney, they overdevelop sort of, and so kidney will ultimately come to lie in the lumbar region, and in the lumbar region it will get the blood supply from the lumbar part of aorta. So initially actually what is happening, that here is the aorta, and aorta will get divided into right and left common iliac artery, which will divide into external iliac and internal iliac. It will also here divide into external and internal iliac. So as the kidneys initially, as they are into the lumbar region like this, initially as they are into the lumbar region, so initially they are getting the blood supply from the common iliac artery, from a branch of common iliac artery. As they ascend upward, first they come somewhat here, and here they will be getting the blood supply from the lower part of aorta, somewhat here, and ultimately as they take their actual position in the upper lumbar region, here now they will be taking the blood supply from renal artery, which is actually the branch of lumbar part, upper lumbar part of aorta. So this is the definitive renal artery. All these other renal arteries, they are actually destroyed. So as the kidney ascend upward, so let's remove that. As the kidney ascend upward, all these remaining branches, they are also destroyed, and ultimately the blood that is going to kidney, it is derived from the lateral branch of aorta, and that lateral branch of aorta is from the lumbar region of the aorta. So that was about the formation of kidney. Thank you so much for watching this video.